Welcome to Scoolinary, the online cooking school that transforms people and connects cultures. You will learn with the best chefs in the industry, and you will discover the broadest online catalog of topics related to gastronomy. We publish new courses every week. In our podcast, we have coffee with a chef every week. Each of them will tell us about their experience and their vision for the culinary world to help you better understand this exciting industry. Come on, join us for coffee. Today we're joining Mary Sue Milliken for coffee. Since starting culinary school at age 17, Mary Sue has advocated for change in the industry through both her voice and actions. Restaurateur, radio host, author, culinary diplomat, TV personality, mother, wife, and of course, chef, she has successfully used her platforms to address hunger, nutrition, and sustainability both locally and globally. Her Scoolinary course, Conscientious Baja California Cuisine, is more than just a course on cooking a specific type of cuisine. It's a chance to make a difference through our individual choices. Hi, Mary Sue. Welcome, and thanks for joining us for coffee.
Hey, great to be here. Thank you.
So before we start, do you drink coffee?
I drink tea, actually,
Oh.
Darjeeling tea.
And is there any special way you prepare your tea?
No, I drink it completely plain, just no milk, no sugar. It's from the, Darjeeling area of India, and it's a very expensive habit, but I just am in love with the flavor. It has like a little bit of kind of muscatel, artichoke, kind of smoky, but it's just a delicious tea.
Ah, that does sound really nice. If you would please tell us in your own words who you are, where you're from. That's so we can get to know you a little bit better.
Yes, of course. Well, Mary Sue Milliken. I am from Los Angeles. I've lived here for, oh gosh, over 45 years. I grew up in the Midwest in the United States, though, in Michigan, and went to chef school on the south side of Chicago, straight from high school. And I have been an owner of my own restaurant with my business partner, Susan Feniger, since 1981, so 42 years. And we have owned restaurants in Los Angeles, Santa Monica, Pasadena, Las Vegas. We still have several restaurants, and we're still going strong.
Nice. So, given that you're in Southern California, which is really abundant in terms of agriculture, what's in season right now?
Oh my gosh, what's the end of summer, beginning of fall? We still have tons of tomatoes, cucumbers, eggplant, zucchini. The melons are gorgeous, and berries and nectarines we still have a lot of. There's also beautiful bok choy, and there's a jicama that's grown in the Central Valley here that is better than anything I've ever tasted as far as a jicama goes. Lots of chili peppers, of course. We live in paradise when it comes to vegetables and fruits.
Oh, definitely. Do you source your Las Vegas restaurants with what you can get in the Southern California area?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. We have the same produce company, and they source things specifically from certain farmers for us, for Vegas. Here in LA, we go to the market ourselves, but sometimes if we have to buy in too huge of quantities, we'll definitely use the same produce company that actually we've been buying from the same company for 42 years.
Wow.
Very loyal we are.
Yeah, it's nice. It kind of dispels a myth that that a lot of produce that's coming into Las Vegas is coming from way far away, South America, Asia, and which seems a little bit of a culinary crime given its proximity to Southern California or California in general.
Yes, so true. And I think that was the case. We opened in Vegas in 1999. And back then, I think that was more the norm, where food was being flown in from all over the globe. But definitely with the explosion of chef led restaurants in Vegas, I think that has changed, 180 degrees.
Wow. So you're in Las Vegas a little bit, and then you're also in California. It seems like you travel quite a bit, and you were recently in Morocco where you cooked for a friend's wedding. What was really intriguing, according to Instagram, was the cake. Can you tell us about the wedding cake?
Absolutely. I'm so glad you asked the question because my first job when I was 17 was in a bakery as working in the front with a little pink dress on and serving people or, getting people cookies and breads and things.
Yeah.
But I wanted to work in the back so badly. And I ended up working for that same bakery for 6 years. And I got really good at making wedding cakes. I would make maybe 75 a weekend. I did all the decorating and um, so uh, in my, the next several decades, I didn't get a chance to make that many wedding cakes, although I do make a couple a year at least. But this one in Morocco a couple months ago, I have to say was probably the favorite one I've ever made ever of all. And it was a lemon olive oil chiffon cake. So it was made with olive oil. I glazed it with a glaze of kumquat marmalade,
Oh,
and then I made a
wow.
toasted sesame buttercream with tahini and toasted sesame oil. And inside each layer, I filled with chopped supremes of lemons and oranges and a sesame crunch candy. And so that, I'm all about the flavor. But then my husband's an architect, and I told him he had to art direct the cake. So I got it to look beautiful shape wise. He had this great idea because the wedding party, we had a henna party the day before, and
Yeah.
they had put henna on our designs on our hands and feet. And he said, "Why don't you hire her to do a henna design on the outside of the cake with her little, like a little syringe?" And so I burnt some sugar and added it to a small amount of the buttercream and made it a really dark kind of brown color. And I hired her, and she came and covered the entire cake with a henna design, and it was really, really pretty. She wanted to go into business with me.
Oh, it was a brilliant idea. If people want to check out the cake, go visit Mary Sue's Instagram. It's there. It is gorgeous. And from what you just said about the interior, it sounds like it tasted amazing as well. So,
Yeah, and I tried to think about Morocco, and
yeah.
the last time I had been there, the orange blossom smell in the air was so strong, and they're all about sesame and olive oil and citrus. So I tried to really choose flavors that were going to really feel like they were from that region.
Yeah. So let's go back to that time where you were working in a bakery. Actually, before that, you started culinary school very young at 17. And that was at a time when being a chef wasn't such the celebrated career it is now. And it probably wasn't very hospitable career for women. Others might have gotten discouraged along the way. And I want to know what was different for you?
It's a great question because I think it's true. It was a very difficult time to be, you know, one of two women in a school of 100 chefs, which was also in a school of plumbers and auto mechanics and all the trades. So there weren't any women in any of the other trades either.
Oh,
But for me, I think I was born with a really positive attitude. They used to call me Little Mary Sunshine when I was a young kid. I also have a lot of determination, and I fell in love with food and cooking and the kind of feeling and the camaraderie in professional kitchens. And I just wasn't going to let anything keep me from, you know, that love that I have.
yeah, and that seems to have served you well throughout your career. And you've made things happen for yourself through what you've been able to do. You've earned access to some amazing opportunities in your career. Your own radio show, for example, traveling with the US State Department to Pakistan on a culinary diplomacy trip. And you've done quite a bit of television work. Was there a specific, or is there a specific experience that stands out for you?
Well, you mentioned the Pakistan trip, and that was I mean, I am totally a, a my church is travel. When I travel, it just feeds my soul. I feel like I understand better my tiny place here in the planet. The problems that I think are big when I'm traveling seem so tiny, especially when you see the world in so many ways. Um, so I have been an incredibly avid traveler I went to I think travel is what stands out for me as the most incredible of experiences. When I was 23, we had already opened our first restaurant, Susan and I. It was a tiny little 900 square foot restaurant with a kitchen that was 10 by 10 feet. The
Wow.
only bathroom was in the kitchen, so people had to come through the kitchen to go to the restroom, and we loved that because that we got to see like Julia Child came through one day and, Gilda Radner. So it was
Oh,
fun back in the day.
yeah.
But my first big trip was to Thailand that my uncle happened to be setting up an engineer, and he was setting up a gelatin capsule plant in Bangkok. And I asked him if he could find me a short stage in Thailand, and he was able to find a chef to take me on in the hotel where he was staying for a month. And so I went there, and I think it was just so transformational for me to see and taste the food of Thailand and then be able to cook it. They did a big traditional Thai buffet every lunch,
Oh,
and so I
wow.
got to work on that every day. And then at night, I'd, wander around and see. I remember my favorite salad was this papaya salad. There was a man on the corner, and he didn't have any legs, but he had this big kind of mortar and pestle, and he would make this salad and serve it in little baggies. And the first time I had it, I was just like blown away, and I had to eat it every single day. So I think those are the kind of experiences that stand out and I'll never forget.
Yeah. Are there places left in the world that you still have to visit? Like uh you cannot wait to go there.
Well, my rule is I like to work when I'm gone. I
Oh.
like to have something to do. I'm not a good tourist. I'm not good at laying on the beach or just hanging out. So anywhere that I can that I can really get into the culture. I'm really looking forward to a trip that I was supposed to take this fall, but it got postponed to next spring to Armenia, where I would be working with the State Department on a culinary diplomacy mission, and that I'm very excited about. I love that part of the world. I love the food, the flavors. I think it's going to be a little bit different from places that I've been, like Turkey and Jordan and Egypt, and I'm kind of excited to kind of press out a little further to the east and see how the culinary traditions change and evolve.
Yeah. So I think travel works its way into the kind of food that you prepare. What excites you about food or the food world at the moment?
Well, 40 some years into owning my own business, I and doing a lot of advocacy work around women in the industry. I think in since the pandemic, I've really focused a lot on accelerating women's access to power in the hospitality industry. Um, I'm one of the 9 founders of a nonprofit called Regarding Her, and I'm spending pretty much most of my time doing that, which is kind of funny because it worked out perfectly. I'm also working on a succession plan for my company, where my business partner Susan and I are over the next 10 years going to slowly transition out of our company, and the 5 top kind of employees that we've had for a long time and who are our core executive team will become the owners of the company. So having something else to focus on keeps me out of their way, which is great because as a founder and kind of a control freak, it's not that easy. So I guess I'm very excited about food and the food world, but I think accelerating women's access to power in the food world is going to, I want to really focus on that because I think that is going to be more impactful than anything. And I feel excited about that.
Yeah, I wanted just to ask one question going back to when you opened your first restaurant. Now you've been in the business for a few decades. You must have a very loyal following in Los Angeles and also probably now in Las Vegas. Uh, how long have you had some of your longest customers?
Oh gosh, I would say, 40 some years,
Wow.
many of them. We have been blessed with a really strong supportive audience. I found when I moved to Los Angeles in the beginning in 1981, I was amazed at how open people were to eating things different than they were where I'd been trained in the Midwest in Chicago. And I was really, and I have to say, LA is a place that really brings out the creativity in people because people are interested in trying new things, which is, I don't think that's a widely known fact about Los Angeles, but that's my experience for sure.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Completely. Uh, let's let's go to regarding her and actually what you said just prior to that, accelerating women in the industry. Uh, what are you doing with regarding her, or what are some of the initiatives that you're working on to achieve that aim to accelerate women in the industry?
Well, it started during the pandemic. We started having weekly Zooms with a bunch of women just kind of, informally to try to figure out like how we're going to save our restaurants. And it became apparent really quickly to me that we had such a strong group of women with so many important and valuable insights, and we were learning so much from each other that this was a format that could really kind of, you know, be a game changer for some, small business owners and young restaurateurs and chefs. So we actually made it more, serious, and we got foundations and companies to give us pretty good donations so that we could give out grants. We've given out uh, grants to 25 women, and the second group of 10 women got $20,000 each, and they also went through a boot camp sort of a course with us where we had classes twice a week for 3 hours each time, and we really took deep dives into financial literacy and marketing and all the kind of things that a lot of people in our industry have to learn on their own. And our industry is so independent. We are all independent people who are really driven and serious about our little businesses, but we don't have a huge support system around us, or we don't have a lot of people to reach out to and learn from their experiences. So this is a situation where I think we're trying to put that into place. We have about 700 members in Los Angeles County and Orange County,
Oh,
and we
cool.
also have another region in DC that's our beta test region for expansion. And we have a lot of programs that connect women with the resources that they need to grow their businesses at a faster pace.
And it comes back to food. Food brilliantly and naturally connects us with something you mentioned once, and that's probably true now more than ever. Can you elaborate a little bit on what you meant when you said that?
Yeah, I think there's the human nature. There's not that many things that we all must do, but eating is one of them. And I think it's not just the it's not just the food, it's not just the nourishment, but it's actually the act of stopping, of sitting down, of sharing ideas, and you know breaking bread. And I think that it has so much power to you know help us see that we're all in this together, and we're all, we all have that in common.
Right, right. However, it hasn't been without its obstacles along the way. And I think you've perceived some of those in your work and in your career. You've always been interested in fixing the food system, been interested in the global food system at every level. I wanted to know what made you start seeing the food system as broken.
I have to say, I think becoming a mom, I think parenting, a mom or a dad has such a very deep way of connecting us and inspiring us to leave a better place than we found when we were children. And I think I remember Meryl Streep uh, came out in the early 90s talking about a spray that was put on apples called Alar. And when I heard her talk about it, and I had a little toddler at my feet, I thought, I would do anything. I would walk on hot coals to make sure that I didn't feed my child anything that was not, really healthy for him. And apples seem to be such a, ubiquitous thing for every kid. Kids eat apples all the time. They love apples. It's like bananas and apples,
Yeah.
some of the first food that children eat. So it really kind of alarmed me. And I remember calling our local national public radio station and saying, I want to do a little interstitial radio show in between your programming, like for 10 minutes, twice, 3 times a week, to talk about the things that in our foods that are killing us. And the 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 CEO of the radio station said, "Well, Mary Sue, I think that's a terrible idea. We do not want to be alarmist about our food system, but how would you like a 1 hour radio show every Saturday morning, and you can talk about the joys of food and the wonderful things, and you can, insert little pieces of information about, the problems that we have as well." So I said, okay, we'll do that. I mean, having had never even, thought about a radio show. And the next week, there we were on the radio, Susan and I, for an hour. And we had that was the beginning of a show called Good Food that we uh, created, and we probably did for about 5 or 6 years until we got too busy, because we then got a TV show, which, and I feel like the radio really helped me get better at messaging and talking about my ideas and philosophies. And so it made the TV show much easier.
Oh, all right. And so I believe on good food, and even now you speak about the topic of hunger, and childhood hunger was a big issue during the pandemic, especially in Los Angeles, because so many children get lunch and breakfast from the public school system. Now you've been active locally and now globally in addressing hunger. And can you share some of the initiatives you've worked on?
Yes, absolutely. I remember I didn't grow up with a lot of wealth. I wasn't on food stamps, but there was a lot of worry in my home with my single mother, worrying about having enough money. And I remember in about, I think, 1987, I met a charity called Share Our Strength, and they made it so easy for me to give back. I didn't have any money in 1987 to give, but I did have my talent, and people wanted to eat my food. So they made it really easy for me to share what I'm strong at, which is cooking. And it had a huge impact on me as sort of, you know, an idea of how to give back. And so I really liked how they did things. They were called Share Our Strength for many years. I went on the board of directors for them for 15 or 18 years. We also rebranded to a much better kind of sounding, more direct, No Kid Hungry campaign.
Hmm.
And that, chef, we involved a lot of chefs, and they still are very involved. We do Chef Cycle every year, where We all cycle 100 miles each day for 3 days in a row, and we raise several $1 million. We have galas and we do tastings, and I've been with that organization since 1987, and I've seen so much great work that they've done, and it's really enriched my life so much. Breakfast after the bell was a really great thing that they started doing, and found that there was less absenteeism, there was better grades in those classrooms. The kids would eat in their small groups rather than in a big chaotic cafeteria. And
Oh, that's great.
some really interesting things. I'm now working with Share Our Strength in India. I've been there twice now, working to share best practices with some very famous and influential Indian chefs about how they could also share their strength and work with the school system in India. Those kitchens that cook those beautiful meals are just like blew me away. They cook for 40,000 kids every day, all vegetarian
Wow.
without one single shred of packaging. It's brilliant.
Wow, that is pretty cool. So you're involved in quite a few different things, and then you're also a member of the Chef's Manifesto, which is a Scoolinary partner. Can you explain a little of what the Chef's Manifesto is to our listeners?
Well, the Chef's Manifesto is a global organization that connects chefs to the Sustainable Development Goals. In the United States, I don't feel like the SDGs are an everyday kind of, you don't hear about them all the time, and the general public is not aware, and nor are chefs. But Chef's Manifesto has really helped us to promote ways that food can contribute to, or to the climate solutions. And I think I love tying it all back to the Sustainable Development Goals, because those obviously were set out by you know, people a lot smarter than me, who looked at all the problems on the globe and really came up with these 17 areas that need to be addressed, including gender parity, and including, reducing food waste, and, living wages. And I just love how they help me to think about, everything I do, and everything I, advocate for.
Yeah, and I think your Scoolinary course is a good example of how you've implemented some of the tenets of the Chef's Manifesto into, or you put into practice every day. So, some of the areas that are laid out in the Chef's Manifesto, what are some other ways you're putting those into practice?
Well, we started, even before I joined Chef's Manifesto, doing an 80-20 kind of uh, program on our menu. So it's not 100% plant-based, but we try to indicate which dishes are 80%, at least 80% plant-based. Some are 100, but we also, believe that just cutting down on proteins and meats, and upping the vegetable and plant-based kind of portion of the meal is important. And I always say that, I want to cook vegetables that are irresistible to a hardcore carnivore, because I think as a chef, we're creative. We can do that.
Yeah.
So it's, trying to come up with more and more menu items that are heavily plant-based, buying local and supporting small businesses, especially women and BIPOC owned businesses, working on food waste, solutions, and composting and packaging. The pandemic was definitely a heartbreak for us in terms of setbacks with packaging, because people became so obsessed with hygiene and making, and there's a perception out there that if everything's wrapped in plastic, it's safe,
Yeah.
which kind of we have to really work hard right now to kind of get back to where we needed to be.
Do
But
you
all
think,
those kind of things, yeah.
yeah, which is worse, or are they kind of on even ground? Is it packaging or food waste, or it's just apples to oranges comparison?
I think the packaging is worse,
Yeah,
personally. It really bothers me. You cannot buy, uh, you just can't buy things unless they're in plastic. And plastic is killing our oceans. And, it's it's not degradable. And we just have to really um, work on that. During the pandemic, we started cooking for homeless people in our kitchen downtown because we were shut down, and we wanted to put back to work any of our undocumented people, which um, we definitely have, and they weren't able to collect unemployment. So we put them back to
yeah.
work first, and we are still doing it to this day, but they are each packaged separately in
Mm.
breakfast, lunch, and dinner. We do about 3,000 meals a day,
Oh wow.
and I'm constantly looking for better solutions, but I haven't been able to find one yet. They need to be microwavable, and they need to be, you know, all these things. So, um,
Well, give yourself a little credit, or a lot of credit. You should, because you've taken the initiative with the dishes in your course on Scoolinary, the conscientious Baja California cuisine course. And the dishes have been thoughtfully designed to inspire people to look at their food purchases and their actions and the way they put food together on their plate just a little bit differently. Can you explain how they do that?
well, I think conscientious is the word that says it all for me, because, not planning menus or buying or eating based on flavor alone, but thinking about where did it come from, how far did it travel, is it in season, is there a way to use this instead of throwing it away, is there something that can be done with it, start making kombucha, or you know
Oh yeah.
being really aware and conscious when you're making the choice of what kind of fish to put in your ceviche, and making sure that that ceviche is not just solid fish but 50% crunchy vegetables, because it's just as good if not better that way. um, so not just every decision based on flavor and on just you know your senses being satisfied, because that's easy. I feel like chefs who cook like that with tons of butter and cream and high protein, and that's
Yeah.
like cheating. That's not a challenge at all.
Well, is it true that you have to cook every day to be happy?
Pretty much. It's interesting. I am never alone, but I have been alone just this past weekend because both of my children are off and my husband's in Europe, and I I was kind of last night thinking, what am I going to eat? And sure enough, I just got in the kitchen, and I didn't even. And this happens all the time in my house, where my husband will say, "We don't have any food." I like to buy food very, last minute. I don't like to have food sitting around for long periods of time, even in the
Yeah.
cupboards, but in the refrigerator for sure. And I'll say, "Oh, you think we don't have any food in here? Just wait. Let me go in there and look." And I love a challenge, so I'll make something up, that is amazing out of what he thinks is nothing. But yeah, it makes me really happy to cook, even if I'm just cooking for one.
Oh. And to get into a superlative, is there anything that makes you happiest to cook?
I would say, what I'm really motivated by ingredients. So it makes me really happy to find new ingredients that I've never tried before. If I go into a crazy Chinese grocery store and see something I've never seen before, the first thing I do is buy it. And then, I figure out how to cook it. And I love a new ingredient. That is always an inspiration for me.
Right. So you're a household name, I feel, and you've made a name for yourself on a global scale. Just wondering, have you ever been starstruck by another chef?
Yes. Well, several times, but the first time I'll tell you about was after I went to chef school. I I had to fight my way into the best restaurant in Chicago to get a job. He was an old school kind of European owner, and he thought having a woman in his kitchen would be very disruptive, and he told me that and offered me a job as the hat check girl. And I said, "Look, I've just been through 2 years of chef school. I've worked at, Maxime's of Paris, which had a location in Chicago at the time. And, I'm not going to check hats for you. I want to work in your kitchen." And he finally broke down after about 6 weeks of, telephone calls and letters, and he hired me. And it was one of the best jobs I ever had. And he was one of my dearest friends and mentors and advisors of my career. And at a certain point, I told him I wanted to go to France. And he said, "Well, if you want to go, I'll help you get a job." And he did. He happened to be going to Paris, and I decided to go at the same time. I sold my car. I had one suitcase of belongings, and that was it. And I took them to Paris, and he got me a job, and I worked at a two-star restaurant in Paris for about a year. At
Wow.
the end of that year, he would happen to be in Europe again, and he said, "Why don't you meet me at Freddie Girodet's restaurant in Switzerland?" And I did, and I ate that meal, and I thought, "I'll never be this good a cook." It just was so fantastic. And then he introduced me to Freddie, and that was the first time in my entire life I thought, I don't know if I'll ever be as good as this is. I'd eaten in all the three-star restaurants in Paris, and
Mm.
I'd eaten it all over, but Freddie Girodet's food at that moment in time just blew me away, and it was just so exciting to meet him. It was really a highlight.
What made Freddy's food different than a three-star restaurant in Paris?
I think it was just more thoughtful, more, you know, it had more soul, it tasted more, it made more sense to me. I don't remember the specifics of it. You know, it was newer, more exciting. It wasn't like the old school, duck pressed in a fancy
Yeah.
machine.
Yeah, you've been in the restaurant business for your entire career. I want to know, how would you like the restaurant industry to be like in the near future? In other words, if you could design it, how would you do it? And, let's keep in mind you have designed many restaurants, but the industry as a whole, what would you like to see that look like?
It's a great question, especially right now, because in this moment, post pandemic, with having gone through a big unsettling Me Too movement and racial justice movement and the murder of George Floyd, and a mass exodus from our industry, that still we are dealing with. I think, um, and that all happened to an industry that was already limping. It was already, not functioning as well as it needs to, not sustainably. So
Hmm.
I think we're going to see a lot of changes in the restaurant industry. I think it's time that it be thoroughly professionalized, that people look at it as a career, as a trade, as a real opportunity that they can progress up and make more and get better at, rather than having it be, which it's been for most of these last 100 years. It's been, the place where if you didn't have any skills, you ended up working in the restaurant industry, and that was you'd bide your time in the restaurant industry until you could get into a better industry. We need to make this industry professional. We need to pay everyone living wages. We need to make sure that women are making half the decisions. Right now, women make up 53% of chef school graduates in the United States, but only own only have 7% of the executive chef positions.
Oh, wow. That
It's
is a
it's
striking statistic.
it is, and it's I think the big message here also is to the consumer, because the consumer is, concerned about, slaves in Ethiopia and their coffee, but
Mhm.
they're not really seeing the fact that the dishwasher at their favorite restaurant lives in a small apartment with three families and one bedroom and works two jobs. So I
Yeah.
do feel like the consumer needs to understand, and I think the government needs to understand that food is artificially cheap in the United States, and on the backs of the most vulnerable populations, we are serving this cheap food, and we need to really turn it upside down. The tax structure for restaurants, especially independent mom and pop restaurants that really create the social fabric of our communities. And losing those is going to be a very huge loss that nobody wants. The government doesn't want, the consumer doesn't want, the operators and the workers don't want. But we have to reckon with the industry as a whole and make it more hospitable to workers.
Yeah. Do you think digital media could have an impact on kind of moving toward that vision of the restaurant industry? YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook. How has the digital media impacted what you do, and how do you see it kind of forming a direction on where we could go in the future?
Yeah, I think it's enormously powerful, and I do feel like it's has a lot of potential to help, you know, make social movements and social impact happen quicker. And I actually love it for that. I actually love being on social media, and I don't, you know, I don't consider myself really good at it, but I once in a while, when, I see something interesting happening and post it, it's pretty amazing how many people, how many views it gets, and I get a lot of people, kind of commenting back, and it's definitely um the way of the future. I'm a futurist anyway. I don't mind change, even though, social media has like its downside without a doubt. But I think it's, inevitable, and we have to embrace it, and we have to use it to the best, you know its best use.
Yeah. Who would you recommend for a future episode of the Scoolinary podcast?
Oh gosh, have you had on Jose Andreas on?
Not that I know of, neither in English, for sure not in English, but I doubt in Spanish.
He is such a superstar, a dear friend, and I love what he's doing. He I would hire him as president. I just think he's fantastic. So I would definitely. I'm happy to hook you up with him. He's got a lot to say, and he's brilliant.
That would be amazing, would be a little bit of an understatement. Hey, Mary Sue, thank you so much for joining us for coffee today. It's been a real great pleasure speaking with you and getting to know where you're at right now, in addition
Thank
to your
you.
storied career.
Thank you. And Wendy, your questions are amazing. And I look forward to coming back and doing another one in a few years when I have a new point of view.
Oh, very good. Well, you're welcome back anytime. Love to have you.
Thanks.
If you like this episode, don't miss an episode by becoming a member. We're waiting for you each week with more guests. We're on all podcast platforms. Just search for Coffee with Scoolinary. We're also waiting for you at our website and on our social networks, where you can get to know all our courses and teachers.